Evil Geniuses have won the 2022 Spring Split, and I think the cool narrative surrounding it is that teams should be taking more chances on North American talent. There is a way to build up rookies. There is a way to build a pipeline and a system in order to facilitate growth of North American talent. Well, I think that's a great storyline, and I think it is, pretty true from at least EG's perspective. I think what is underrated about this is how they actually did it, because you don't just throw in a whole bunch of rookies and just hope for success, right? And hope for, it to go through the whole grinder, and then, you end up getting two good pieces or one good piece out of it. This wasn't the EG process, and I'd like to point out some of the characteristics which I think made EG's plan actually work, which is essentially pairing veterans with rookies. I think that's incredibly imperative, because when you think about just the entire setup of a 5-man squad, if you put too many rookies in, then you have to teach all of them everything. And also individually, you have to teach all of them. So it becomes this task to where you're teaching everybody all their roles all at the same time, and each individually on their own, whenever you get one-on-one time, etc. And then you have to rely heavily on your positional coaches as well too. And so it's an incredibly tall task that I don't think the modern coaching staffs of today are actually prepared to do fully. I don't think that they can actually function with a full 5-man squad of rookies, right? Or even 4-man squad. I think it would be incredibly difficult. And I just don't think it's the most intelligent way to set up an entire team, regardless. Because at the end of the day, you want someone that is kind of like a leader, that is also to be able to lead by example, because you need a certain amount of buy-in from the veterans to then carry over into the younger rookie players, so that you have buy-in from them too, because they see the veteran players and they see that they're respecting the coaches or respecting the system. And so that gets just inherent buy-in, because that's one of their people, right? It's a player, and they're a player, and they're a new player, right? And maybe there are some things in which rookie players aren't comfortable asking to the coaching staff, and so they can then go towards these veteran players and be like, hey, well, like, how do you think I should have played this game before, because I wasn't sure what to do here. So I was kind of confused with the call, and I know that I made a mistake, so like, what should I do better next time? So that kind of culture only happens when you have veterans mishmashed with rookie players. So essentially you have an on the field kind of coach, an in-game coach, and an out of game coach as well too, a kind of a life leader, right? Because they're a prime role model example for those newer players to follow. And so therefore that helps create the system even better and kind of greases the gears, so to speak, right? And I say, like, on top of that, it's not just that the rookies get this advantage, but the older veterans also get, the advantage of being reinvigorated, and the fact that they see these young players, they want to learn a lot, and they want to know about the game a lot. And, any great teacher will tell you that they learn a lot by teaching rather than just knowing knowledge, right? Some of the brightest minds have said that they have learned a ton more about their own field or expertise because they had to teach it to someone else. So that just makes them gain further knowledge, because they're able to actually explain themselves a little bit better, a little bit more clear, as they continuously teach this young, protege. So, and plus, as I said before, it instills good habits for the young, right? It instills them, to be on the grind, to play solo queue, to kind of at least take into consideration what their coaching staff is saying, take into consideration criticism, because you as a veteran are taking criticism, right? So why shouldn't they? So I think this is the prime structure that North American teams have just been disregarding quite a lot, in fact. Either it's bad scouting or it's just putting too many rookies in all at once. And oftentimes too, it's putting in band-aid solutions of, well, since my team is falling apart, I just need to change out pieces because, like, I don't know what's really wrong. And I always make the analogy of, when you're fixing a car, it's not that you just start replacing random parts and you hope that it works. And also too, like saying if, you're trying to build like a super fast car, if you change all too many parts at once and something goes wrong, you don't know what the fuck happened. You don't know what went wrong. So to do that in the team aspect sense is just as idiotic. Golden Guardians 2021 roster having all rookies besides Stixay was a terrible idea. And look how that worked out. It didn't work out very well at all, until they had to change out some pieces and whatnot and get some veteran names in there. So let's go on to the players, the veteran players of Evil Geniuses, because I don't think they really got enough praise in this finals, because just when you look at, a player like Impact, for instance, he is quite literally the best top laner in the history of Western League of Legends. I would put that hands down when you count longevity, the ability for them to stay at the top, for so long. You could also put a little bit into the title aspect if that's what you care about as well. I mean, he's had 7 titles, I believe. It's 5 LCS titles now. 4 with Team Liquid and 1 with Evil Geniuses now, and he had 2 OGN titles, right, or LCK titles. So, and on top of that, even more impressive, I think, is he's made 6 out of 10 years that he's been playing, he's made it to Worlds, and then he's made it twice to quarters, once in 2016 and once in 2017 on Cloud9. So it's insane. This guy's just ability to play at the maximum. And I always say that it seems like Impact is like the voice of reason within his teams, that he makes people pull back in plays, and he reminds people exactly what they need to do in the current game state. And I would point towards one recent example of that. If you go watch the video, I'll link it down in the description below, but go watch the video of the 5v5 fight where Danny gets a pentakill. Not the recent one in the Baron Pit, but before, when he was on Tristana, and this was with Jizuke in the lineup. Impact's comms in that are actually insane. He's yelling out all the relevant information. He's given his team a heads up. He's given his team a heads up about what he's going to do. He just plays that team fight perfectly, and that's exactly what you want out of someone that's a veteran, someone that can actually lead the team through relevant information like that and not clog up the comms. On top of his ability to just speak clearly, just think of the amount of styles that this guy can actually play. It's actually insane. When you need him to step up to play a carry, he'll totally do that, right? We saw that with the Rise pick, right, where he swapped from top lane to mid lane with Jojo Pyun, and instead he took the Rise, right? And you think of just his adaptability for style itself. Look at how many fucking different junglers he's played with. He's played with Xmithy, known as one of the best. He's one of the best counter gankers, I think, in the history of the LCS. And that's a unique style. You have Sven Skaren, who is more of a little bit of an aggro jungler. You certainly have Rush, who, back in the tip days, super aggro jungler, right? Contracts, another really wild and aggro jungler as well. And then you have Inspired, which he's more of like a control style. He's quite a balanced jungler, you could say, in all senses, in all regards. So that's insane to be able to shift from all those different styles of junglers and play very well with all of them. That's absurd. That's actually insane. And given that he has looked good all throughout that entire time, that just boggles the mind how he's able to even accomplish something like that. And then you look at the ability for him to play with any support style, right? You look at Vulcan, who is, now he's very roam heavy. You have Core JJ, who's roam heavy but also engage heavy. You have Smoothie, he was more engage heavy. And you have Ignar, who is just a wild, crazy ass support, right? So his ability to be able to even adapt to all these different supports and all these different junglers, I gotta give him kudos to be able to be like one of the most adaptive top laners ever to play the fucking game. It's actually insane. And then you go to Vulcan. I think it's a beast how he was able to change up his style so much to match the current meta, but also just his reiteration throughout the years. You look at the 80 carries that he's played with Sven, who is a little bit more conservative, but he's more of like a half and half of lane kingdom and conservatism, towards the middle parts of the game, and he's able to pop off in team fights. And then you have the full throttle other way of Piglet before, when he first started out in his career, and now he had to play with this guy that was just super aggro, super lane kingdom, wanted to dominate the lane. Basically, if you guys have never watched Piglet, he was basically like, the Korean Uzi. That's all, just less skilled, right? So, in terms of the coaching staff for Evil Geniuses, I mean, how phenomenal were they in terms of their drafting and playoffs? I mean, you gotta hand it up to fucking Artemis and Peter Dunn for what was basically immaculate drafts almost all throughout the playoffs themselves, and even obviously heading into the playoffs. I mean, they even tried the Mordekaiser in game 2 against 100 Thieves, right? Which worked out. It wasn't the greatest, like, super best looking pick, but they tried it out. It actually was serviceable, and that's something that Impact was willing to play too, which also shows to his flexibility as a player. And then teams couldn't even challenge their Ornn pick, right? You had Team Liquid that couldn't challenge it at all. You had I think Cloud9, you had 100 Thieves. None of them could challenge the Ornn pick, and until people were able to challenge it, which no one ever was able to, narrator, then they weren't going to change up the game plan, because they didn't need to really get cute at all with any of their drafts. And then like I said before, you had the lane swap between Impact and JoJo in game 4 against TL in the upper bracket. Like, brilliant stuff. If your players are willing to play that, and they're adaptable enough, like, yeah, do a different draft like that and see what you can accomplish with that. Now, there's a tweet thread that Artemis made after the win against 100 Thieves, and I'll link that down in the description below as well too. But he talks about personal responsibility between players, and essentially you have one goal as a team, but you have 5 jobs, right? So as long as everyone does their particular jobs, you're going to meet that one goal, right? And as long as you make it coincide with the one goal, then you're good. You're indestructible as a team. And I think that's something that more coaches need to reiterate to their players, is that you have a job, and I'm going to hold you accountable to this one job. Personal accountability. That's something that I don't think a lot of teams are doing right now. And you could even, like, place this over into like the whole Cloud9 scenario of just like, well, I guess no one's to blame of the entire system, right? It's kind of everyone's fault, but there's no like pointing towards, well, who was actually responsible for this, who's responsible for this section, etc., right? And I had asked Artemis, this was last year? I had asked him about coaching a difficult player like Chizuke. Like, how is that? How do you coach a difficult player like that? And essentially what he was saying was that you don't really try and throttle that playstyle, because otherwise, why would we even get Chizuke in the first place? That's a good point. But he said that essentially you have to work towards connecting him to the bigger picture, making him realize that it's not just about his own gameplay, but it's about a shared goal, right? And that's what he had talked about previously with the 5 jobs, 1 goal. And this is probably why you had Jojo Pyun's style start to change, and I think quite heavily as the weeks progressed later on in the spring split, and then certainly headed into playoffs, was that he started to be more team focused. And I don't think that's by accident at all. I think they sat him down and said, okay, we we realize that you're really great in lane, and that's awesome, but now we need to have you focus on more team oriented things. And also, I mean, his team fighting was abysmal. Like, let's just be honest, right? But as it progressed throughout the weeks, his team fighting got better and better. He started to get certain positioning. He started to understand certain abilities and what abilities that he needs to watch out for. He understood more so when Vulcan or when Impact are going to engage, right? So he started to learn all of these things and figure out the bigger picture. And I don't think that's by accident. So it's a really awesome job from the coaching staff. And then there was another comment that Artemis had said, which was that he was facilitating peaking, right? So if you guys, aren't familiar with it, the concept of peaking is, you don't go super ham in the beginning, like say the first couple weeks of the spring split. It's like, no, you kind of take it easy. You don't go too crazy, but then you start to ramp up for playoffs. And he said that they rested before their Team Liquid match because they just wanted to watch VODs and maybe just review some small stuff, right? It's kind of like a big test. Before the big test, you don't crunch at the end of the night, before you have to wake up into the morning to go to school and then take the test. It's like, no, you get proper fluids, you eat a nice, small breakfast maybe, and you just kind of review some small stuff, and then you just go in because you already did your preparation before. There's no reason to have all this anxiety or to, overload your mind in that sense. And I think that's the same approach that maybe Evil Geniuses was taking before when they faced against Team Liquid. So I just think overall, big ups to Evil Geniuses, big ups to the scouting, right? The scouting from Empire and Peter Dunn when, way back when. I think there's like a tweet from I Will Dominate that says, Peter Dunn had contacted him in the off season saying that, this Jojo Pune Fortnite kid is absolutely cracked, so like big ups to the entire EG staff and also to the veterans themselves. Well, yes, it's cool that there's an awesome storyline for all these young players and rookie talent, and rightly so. You can focus on that kind of narrative, but I think there should be some attention paid towards these veterans and the coaching staff as well and the system that they've built up.